Peace of mind is just knowing that you're being present and you understand what the lay of the land looks like. So if we have peace of mind for the future, that's usually having a plan in place. If it's peace of mind for the present, I mean, so in the morning I wake up and I look at my schedule for the day, but that's not the first time I've done it. I do it the night before. I lay it out on a piece of paper. So I wake up and I kind of know what the flow of the day is going to look like. Get spend time with my kids, spend time with my wife, spend time with my family. We get to go to events. So, I find peace of mind is what makes you calm and what makes you just feel like you in your skin.
Welcome to the Verdict Signal podcast, where we feature how top attorneys help people make informed choices, avoid common mistakes, and move forward with confidence. Now, enjoy the show, and here's your host.
Daniel Gao here. I'm the host of Verdict Signal, and today we're expanding our conversations to the experts who protect what people build, their careers, families, and businesses. I have Andrew Ayers, a seasoned attorney and founder of Andrew M. Ayers PC, a law firm serving families and small business owners. With over 2 decades of experience in estate planning and business law, Andrew helps his clients simplify the complex, offering plain English guidance and practical tools that protect their legacies and empower smart legal decisions. Whether it's securing a business foundation or planning for the future, Andrew makes legal planning approachable, proactive, and personalized. He's also the author of How Contracts Become Lawsuits and a frequent speaker on helping everyday people navigate legal challenges with confidence. So Andrew, welcome and glad to have you here.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm happy to be here and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so let's start at the very top, Andrew. How did you first get interested in the legal field?
When I was in high school, I used to like to do Lincoln Douglas debate, and I had this image of being in court all the time and the traditional lawyers you see on TV. These days we'd tell you to go look at Suits and Harvey Specter. When I was growing up, it was Law and Order and watching Sam Waterston as the DA on Law and Order. So that was originally what showed my interest in high school. That at college I went and got a degree in political science. And that's kind of a natural flow then onto law school. And ironically, at some point, I had actually thought I really wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. So I was convinced that I was going to go into the music business, represent music artists, and be heavily into that field. And that was mainly because I'd been involved with the radio station at college. But when I graduated law school, I found that that's a very small community, and you really need the right connections to get into it. So that just wasn't on the table for me, and so I took my career in a different route.
Okay. And what led you to focus on the estate planning route?
When I started my career, I worked for a solo practitioner in Manhattan, and our focus was on family law. But what I found with my clients is we would finish up a divorce or we'd finish up whatever the dispute was, and they then often had secondary needs afterwards. One of those was estate planning, and the other was often working with the business owners who had now gotten divorced, and they needed help cleaning up the business and getting a plan for growth going forward. So my daughter was born in 2010, and about 8 months later, I split with the solo practitioner and started my own firm. And at that time, I started focusing less on the family law piece and more on the estate planning and the business law to really help people grow and get that planning in place.
Okay. And what's one thing that you wish more people understood about working with an attorney?
I think that it doesn't have to be intimidating. I think, again, going back to what we see on TV, a lot of times lawyers are portrayed and society generally is really aggressive and judges can be kind of angry with you. And I think on the planning side of things, I would like to think we're a lot friendlier.
Mhm.
And at least, the attorneys that I know who are running firms similar to mine, I think we try to make the process as frictionless as possible. When we're thinking about long-term planning or we're thinking about planning after you've passed away, those aren't things that people normally like to talk about. They definitely don't like to think about it. So I think anything we can do to make that process easier can get people to at least start that conversation. And I think what people should also understand is you don't always need a really big complex plan. So a lot of times we're going to have that discussion and you have one thing in mind because you've watched podcasts like this or you've read a blog article and you think you need a really complex trust. But then we talk a little bit and find out that based on what you have and what your goals are, we can really simplify that process and get the right plan for you today. And that complex plan may be down the road 5 or 10 years, but today you often need something a little more simplified.
Okay. And I don't know if you kind of encountered this. I mean, you mentioned as far as like the media and people kind of perpetuate that, hey, lawyers, like you can't trust them, you have to be careful of lawyers. But I think that one thing that people, because of that, they really need to see you as you are their advocate. You are representing them in their best interest. You're not trying to get them in trouble, or you're not on the other side, the other table, the other side of the table from them. You're really on their side of the table, really trying to help them. So is that kind of something you see with some people where they kind of look at you more as the adversary, but you're really on their side?
They might at the beginning. So I think of it as the way I will often encounter that is if a whole family comes in to meet with me. And I've had this before where mom was my client. So mom came in and we had a big meeting in my office, and her three kids were there. The spouses of the three kids were there. And then also stepdad was there. So mom's new husband. And so there's a lot of kind of raised heckles in the room. People were kind of angry at each other. And from the kid's standpoint, and I get it, they were worried that their inheritance was somehow going to be siphoned off to her new husband because their father had passed away. And frankly, stepdad was smart. He kind of stayed out of all of it. He was almost cringing in the corner. He didn't say a word. He was, he knew what was going on in the room. And so at that point, we had a little discussion, and each of the kids kind of said their piece on why they thought they were entitled to whatever they were entitled to. And then we kind of went, and mom came back a week later, and the first thing she did was apologize. So she came back just herself, nobody else in the room. And so I explained to her, you don't have to apologize at all. You were there. You were my client. My goal is to put into place the plan for you. You've now heard from your three kids what each of them thinks they're entitled to. You've seen that your new husband is obviously very intimidated by all this. But at the end of the day, we're here to draft your plan. And you can choose to listen to your kids, or you can do whatever you would like to do, because in the end, it's your plan. It's not a family estate plan. It's for you as the person creating that plan.
Okay. And what would you say is some of the most common situations that your clients come to you for? I'm sure there's gonna be some people that come to you for the actual planning, like they have the foresight to that they need to plan. I'm sure you also have situations where people come in and it's almost like they come in kicking and screaming. It's like, oh, my spouse made me came and get this done. And then also on the other side of it, when there was no plan in place and now they're going through probate and everything's on fire and now you have to try and fix things. But I mean, would you say that that kind of runs the gamut, or are there more common situations that your clients come to you for?
You've done great research. Those are the kind of the spectrum of how people come to me. It's very common a family member dies and somebody is made the personal representative. They get overwhelmed by the process, and then they say, I want to make sure I don't leave that for my family. I've had plenty of families come in where one of the two spouses wants an estate plan. They are really focused on it. And the other one is just kind of sitting there like, whatever, I'll sign whatever you give me to sign.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to kind of read the room and figure out with your clients who's really involved, who's not, and making sure they get the right plan. I think when we have those disinterested spouses, sometimes it's important to make sure you're speaking to them too and getting to understand that they can have a separate estate plan. So I think some people have a notion that we're going to come in as a married couple and create one will that we both sign. But the reality is we don't do joint wills. We do a separate will for each person. And so even that disinterested spouse who doesn't really want to be involved in the process, making sure to get through to them to say, I understand your wife wants to do this. You can do something different. This is your plan. You're all part of this. So even if you're not going to say the same person should be the guardian of the kids, we want to make sure we are getting your wishes in writing. My goal has always been not to have anybody sign a document they don't understand. So early on in this, I had people come to me to update their plans, and they would say, I worked with this attorney 5 or 6 years ago. Here's what he did for me. And I'd read through it and say, okay, this is what's going to happen, X, Y, and Z. And they'd get shocked and say, that's not what I wanted. And so, well, what do you mean? They said, well, we told them what we wanted. We just showed up one day. We just signed the documents. Frankly, I never really read what was in them. And I said, okay, well, now we're going to fix that problem. And we're going to start with, you need to understand what's in the documents. And if it doesn't align with what you want, we can change it. We can either do a new one or maybe just an amendment. But it's important for me, for all my clients, wherever they are in that spectrum of somebody just died all the way to I'm dragging my spouse to this meeting, that everyone understands what's actually in the documents.
Okay. And I'm sure you've had lots of situations where you're talking with clients and you mentioned something and they just had no idea that that was a thing. So, I mean, what are some of these common misconceptions that you hear kind of most often from your clients that they just don't realize they need to be aware of this or that it's even really a thing?
Mm-hmm. I think the main one I hear is that everybody needs a trust. And I, so, and the, what I always tell the people is I'm sure you've watched a podcast, you read a blog, and there's plenty of people out there who says everyone needs a trust. And I always say, let's modify that. Everyone can probably benefit from a trust, but do you need one? That's the bigger question. So if you come to my office and you really just you own a house with your spouse, and then you have some retirement accounts with beneficiaries on it, you probably don't need a trust. We can probably do some different planning tools. For example, you have adult kids, we can have the house transfer to them with a transfer on death deed. You've got the retirement accounts planned for already with beneficiaries. We can absolutely do the trust. I'm happy to take your money, but the reality is not everyone needs that trust. And so a lot of people, I think, get intimidated, and that's kind of where we started with this conversation. Is what holds people back from even coming into the room, and that is people see everything out there, and you get mailings in the mail that say everybody needs a trust, but trusts are long and they tend to be involved.
Mhm.
I've heard jokingly somebody has a two-page trust, and I've never actually seen that. I've been meaning to research that, but the
Mhm.
reality is your trust is going to be about 40 to 70 pages long, and it seems like a lot of work, and it seems like it's going to be expensive. But I don't want that to be the barrier because oftentimes we have that discussion and find out we don't even need all that. We can do something a little more simplified and really tailored to what your goals are.
Okay. And what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes people make before they call a lawyer?
Number one mistake is talking to their neighbor, and their neighbor has worked with an attorney, and their neighbor has done some significant planning, and they think that, if it's good enough for my neighbor, it's good enough for me. And so if your finances, so if you and your neighbor have had the same career trajectory, you've worked at the same company, you drive the same cars, your houses are worth the same amount, same number of kids. I mean, unless your neighbor is frankly your twin and you've lived the same life, the reality is somebody else's estate plan doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for you. And that used to come up even when I was doing divorces as well. We would have people come in and say, well, my neighbor just got divorced and she got X, Y, and Z. Okay, but your neighbor's husband does something completely different than your husband. So that neighbor, that friend who's already been through the process, it's a good starting point in that it may inspire you to go talk to a lawyer, but what worked for them isn't necessarily going to work for you. And if you want to find the ways of doing it right now, you go online and there's all these generalized websites that are just going to mail merge your information into a form and sell it to you for $4.99 or $5.99. And maybe that's what your neighbor did. I mean, and that could be the craziest part is you think your neighbor's got it all figured out. They went to a website for $99 and got a will that's not even going to protect their family, but you don't know any better. And now you're stuck thinking that what they did was right for you when a simple consultation with an attorney can really give you the right map for where you want to be.
Okay. And I mean, with AI becoming more and more prevalent these days, and I'm sure you get a lot of these people also, they do the research on AI and they said, oh, AI told me this, ChatGPT told me that. Um, but what's the biggest, I guess, trouble or mistakes or issues that people could run into if they just kind of do this all on their own using AI?
That they don't know what they don't know, and that the AI doesn't ask you the right questions. So if you tell ChatGPT to generate a will for me, it's going to generate a will for you. It's going to try to please you. I mean, that's the whole point of the ChatGPT or whatever LLM you're using. It's trying to give you an answer that you will like. So it's not going to ask the hard questions. It's not going to say, what about that child from the first marriage that you had? You got to hope that it actually gives you the right form for the state you're in. So what I've seen with clients is they've used AI as a starting point. Some people have brought me documents, literally a proposed will and the other documents they think they're going to sign. And if that's the case, I'll say, listen, I wouldn't recommend you sign these. I would recommend you sign up with my office and we go through the proper process. But, I guess I could actually review them and tell you everything that's wrong. But the reality is they all look the same. The sections are kind of the same, but they're not necessarily tailored for you and your situation. They haven't gone through the process of having that discussion with you to get to know what your goals are because again, ChatGPT or any AI is just trying to keep you happy and give you a response that'll make you give them the thumbs up at the end like they did a good job. They're not doing the planning that you need to be doing with somebody who can ask the questions.
Okay. Okay. So then when it comes to the mistakes people can make before, on the flip side of that, what are a few smart first steps they can take either before they call someone like yourself or even when they start working with someone like yourself?
Mhm. Yeah, I think just doing research and having an idea of what you're going to be involved in. And this is where AI can be helpful. You can use AI as an assistant to have discussions saying, I've got three kids, two are in college, one's in high school. I'm thinking about an estate plan. What do I think are some good provisions, or how should I be thinking about dividing up my assets? You can have it as far as that discussion partner. You can watch podcasts like this. You can read blogs. There's a lot of clients who come to me who are very knowledgeable about the situation. And I think one of the things before you meet with an attorney, you want to go and find out more about them. So I'm a big proponent of making sure you are a good fit with your attorney. So if you want Harvey Specter to draft your will, I'm not that guy. I'm definitely not Harvey. So we have that first phone call. It's usually 15 or 20 minutes, and we get to know your goals and how it works with my office, what the process looks like. And I think that's the best way to get started is talk to people and make sure they fit with who you want to be working with. Because I've also had clients who we have that call and and I can tell immediately, and they can often tell too, that it's not going to be the right fit. So maybe they want to come in and have weekly meetings and go over documents here and there, and they don't want to use a computer and they're very, tech averse. Those people definitely need estate planning. And if there's a way to find it to make it work with my office, I'm happy to do it. But oftentimes they're just not a good fit. And we try to help them find somebody else, maybe closer to them, who has more time to meet with them as often as they'd like. Again, I think it's very important to make sure that you speak to the attorney and get involved with them and understand that you're going to have a strong working relationship. And that's one of those things that's lost with those websites that are just mail merging things is there's no relationship there. It's just you've given them money and you've typed some things into a form.
Okay. And going through on that thread, as far as like when you're looking for an attorney that you want to work with, there's the pieces where you want to make sure that you're a good fit, that you like them, that you trust them, that you can connect with them. But then there's also the other side of it, which is their ability, their experience, and how they're going to actually get you the end result that you're looking for. Now, obviously, in an ideal situation, you want both, someone that has the experience, but and you also really connect with and you like. But in some situations, like if someone had a situation where they're looking at one attorney, which they really like, they really connect, they really trust, and their experience, their ability is okay. It's not terrible, but like it's not the best either. And there's another attorney who's really the best in the industry, like the best of the best, but maybe they don't connect as well. Maybe they don't trust them 100%, maybe like a good amount, but not 100%. How, like, what would you recommend to people to, as they kind of decide on this? Is it more leaning towards the I like you, I connect with you, or can you actually get what I want to have done?
Or find a third and see if you find someone who's a better fit. Yeah, I think I would lean towards making sure it's someone I can work with. But also you have to understand your goals. I mean, if we're young, let's say we're 24, we just got married and we don't have any kids, we don't own any property, we have like $10 in our 401k, then you probably don't need the super experienced, really high priced lawyer. So if you gel better with the other one, then I would say, that's where you'd want to go with that. So I think it's a matter of understanding how you're going to work with somebody and what your goals are. And I think a lot of times we see some overkill in estate planning, and it's because people are kind of boxed into thinking I need the highest priced attorney or the most formal guy. Again, the Harvey Specter and the big tower downtown, and they will get the work done, absolutely. But then afterwards, what are you going to be left with? So for example, with my clients, we have a lot of connections. So my goal is at least 65 touches a year between emails, between mailed newsletters, a birthday card. I want you to be part of my office. I want you to be part of my law firm family. You're going to get that at a smaller firm with people who you know, like, and trust. When you go to some of these bigger firms, you're probably not going to get all of that. And it's going to feel a little more impersonal. And some people don't mind that. Some people are happy to have this be very transactional. I just want these documents and be done with it. And in that case, that first guy who has more experience may be the right one for you. But you also have to remember as you grow, you're going to make changes, make amendments to your plan. Maybe you have kids or then grandkids. You're going to make sure you can have a nice long-term relationship with these folks as well. And if that other attorney is the one you got the better relationship with, I would almost lean more towards that because you want to think of this as a long-term relationship, not just a give me a piece of paper to sign and I never see you again.
Okay. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into that as far as like the changing over time, because I think some people that just are not familiar with estate planning may think that it's just a one and done. Hey, set me up. I got my paperwork done. I'm good to go. But then as you mentioned, like if they have kids, they have grandkids, they get married, they get divorced, they add more assets, they invest in whatever it is. So is the mindset for estate planning really it is going to evolve over time in probably in most situations, or is it more of like just a you have it done once and you're good to go?
Well, so the reality is most times it's going to be if you've done it once, you're good to go. So your will, unless you have a provision that says it expires on a certain date, your will doesn't expire. So when I meet with people who have a will from the 1980s, it's still valid. So if they passed away on their way out of my office, that would be the document we use. Same with your powers of attorney. If they don't have that expiration date on, they're still going to be good. So you can do it once and be done with it. But I think the reality is in life, we know there's a lot of changes. In the clients I work with, we recommend at least every 3 years, we at least have a phone call and we check in and see what's changed. When you have children, you'll probably notice I've got 3 kids, and every 3 years, life seems completely different. 3 years ago, they were all in the same elementary school. Right now, I think we have 3 kids in 3 different schools. So they grow up fast, things get moved around. So it's important to make sure that you're getting those right updates. And then when we get to we're having grandkids, then that's a whole new ballgame we want to consider. So part of what even allowed me to go to law school was that my grandfather had set aside a trust with money for both my brother and myself that could be used only for graduate school. So for me, that helped me get my first 2 years of law school because for him, he had worked his way up from the mailroom at Dun and Bradstreet. He never had a college education. So he finished high school, went to the war back in the 40s, and then worked at Dun and Bradstreet for about 30 or 40 years and then retired. To him, he had worked his way up, but he valued the importance of a graduate education. So my mother has a graduate degree, my father has a graduate degree. He wanted to make sure that his grandsons also had that opportunity. So he had created a special trust just for that. And when I tell that story to clients, a lot of times you'll see the light bulb go off above their head and they go, oh, that's a great idea. And it doesn't have to be a graduate school education. It can be money for a first house or money for a wedding or whatever's important to your family. And it's a great way to leave a legacy directly to your grandkids because oftentimes your children are now in their 20s and 30s. They're doing really well. You're going to leave them some money, but it's not really life-changing kind of money. So what can you do? You can say, you know what? Let's change somebody's life I can really change, and let's leave that money for my grandkids.
Okay. Okay. So we talked quite a bit about the estate planning side of it. I want to touch a little bit on the probate side of it because I mean, this is kind of the house is on fire now, and what do we have to do to firefight?
Mhm.
What type of advice would you give to people that are now kind of at this stage? They didn't do the planning beforehand, they're in probate. What's kind of like the main things they need to be aware of as they go through this process?
I think you need to be aware that it's very much so totally unlike what I've told you as far as estate planning goes. The probate side is very much a check your box kind of thing. You're not going to go to a website and check boxes and mail merge yourself out of probate. But the reality is, probate is a very, box to box kind of legal process. If you have a will, then it's even simpler. You submit the will, a death certificate, and a petition, and then the court can manage where all the assets have to go. If you don't have a will, then it really is checking boxes. Usually the probate clerk will give you a memo that says, here's the 5 things we need from you. One of them can be a family tree if we're not sure, which family members are alive and who should be inheriting. So you have a little more work to do without a will, but it really is a very structured process. But when we have people fighting over things, that structure can blow up a bit. So if we have a child from a previous relationship that nobody knew about until somebody passes away, chances are that's going to make things a little bit hairy, but you can usually work them out. And the probate court I found is very well trained to handle these kind of disputes. Everyone's really worried that they're going to end up on a Jerry Springer type episode in front of the probate court. But the reality is the judges are used to handling this. They know the law, they know the procedures, and they can often calm things down and help push you through the next steps. But really, I would think of it as like a station to station, box to box kind of process in probate.
Okay, got it. Now, I do want to touch on business law because you do offer business law, and you mentioned this earlier as
Mhm.
well. So with business law, I mean, the business law is pretty broad. So
Mhm.
specifically, what do you help your clients with when it comes to the business law side?
So usually it's a small business and it's either helping them get set up or it's I've set up my company using an online website and I never did the operating agreement or I never did anything after that. And
Mhm.
I know that I need to formalize that business structure.
Mhm.
In a lot of cases, it's actually somebody who we're also working on the estate planning for. So we're creating kind of a comprehensive plan, getting the business side cleaned up, getting an estate plan put in place. And then sometimes that may be that we create a trust that would own your business interests. That's kind of where everything intersects.
Mhm.
The other big area on the business side that I tend to work with is real estate LLCs. So a lot of people that I run into have properties they bought about a decade ago. They've got a great mortgage rate of like 2 or 3%. They don't want to sell the property. They've decided they want to rent it out, but they want to make sure they're protected. They want some liability protection. And so we'll look into moving that property into an LLC. And then from all of those businesses, little things crop up. Maybe somebody owes you money and you want a nasty lawyer letter, or sometimes that lawyer letter grows into we actually have a lawsuit. So it's really kind of looking at a small business, seeing what different legal needs they need. And if it's something I can help with, then I help with it. If it's something outside of my realm, I will usually refer it out to somebody I know.
Got it. Okay. Now, when it comes to expectations, is I mean, I think that if people have the right expectations when they're going into something, then things tend to go a little bit smoother. So,
Mhm.
how do you approach that with your clients? Like, how do you set those expectations, whether it's through estate planning, whether it's through probate, whether it's through the business law side, or really anything else, so that they feel informed and supported throughout the process, and there's no surprises along the way?
Sure. I think one of the biggest ways is in very limited circumstances, am I still doing hourly billing? So for most people, everything is done on a flat fee. So we can take that price concern right off the table. Traditionally people hate when they get that big bill from a lawyer at the end of the month. Like, well, how did he spend 50 hours on my case? I didn't hear from him very much this month. So I try to take that off the table and we say, okay, here's the work we're going to do. Here's the fee for it. So everyone's on the same page on the fee side of things. As far as expectations go, I just try to keep that line of communication open and make sure people understand kind of what's next, what needs to be done. When we're dealing with business, it's usually a matter of here's your documents. I know you need some time to review them. You've got a week or two. If I don't hear from you, you're going to get a follow-up email from me. Hey, just checking in. How's that operating agreement coming? If we're doing a real estate LLC, I just need a copy of the deed. If I don't get it in a couple of weeks, do you have it? If you don't have it, let me know and I can try to download it from online. And a lot of times people say, well, yeah, why don't you just download it? It'll save me the time of having to go find it. So I think it's the constant contact. As I said before, I tend to be in contact with my clients pretty frequently. There's a weekly email. We have mailed newsletters. I want them to feel comfortable receiving things from me, but then also reaching out to me to say, hey, what's going on? I haven't heard in a couple of weeks. And, oh, your deed's been filed. We're just waiting for the county to process it. Sometimes that happens where it just, it's out of our control. We file something and we just have to wait a couple of weeks. But I want them to feel comfortable having that interaction and communication. And when you work with me, we've got a client portal. If you're worried about security, you don't want to be emailing documents, you can securely submit them through the portal and send messages. Other people will text message, some people will email. So at the outset, I try to reach out to them and say, what's like, how do you like to work? So, Daniel, you're signing up. Are you a text message guy? Do you like email? Are you really worried about your boss seeing something? We can do it in the portal. So I want to kind of suss out from them early on what's the best way for us to communicate.
Got it. Okay. Now, Andrew, you did share a story before, kind of like so people can understand what this process is. But and I'm sure that throughout your experience, you've had some very memorable cases you've worked on. I'm sure some that were also very challenging as well. Is there maybe one more story that you can share of just one of those cases that stands out in your mind, and really how you were able to get them a successful outcome in the end?
Yeah, I mean we've had a lot of those. I mean, we talk a little bit on the estate planning side about making sure that we know who we're planning for and who the client is. I think on the business side, I've got one going on right now where it's a perfect example of why you need to get your documents in place. It was two friends that started a business together. It operated for a couple of years, was making good money, but then they decided they want to go separate ways. They don't have an operating agreement, so now they're stuck using a lawsuit
Hmm.
to actually divide up the company. It's just 50-50 ownership. They've been fighting for 2 years. The legal bills have been very high. It's been very ugly. So I always try to explain that to my clients who are signing up, who are doing business formation or setting up or just setting up the corporate documents that, you look at these two and I can show you the legal bill if you'd like. Or for about 1% of that, we can just create an agreement to make sure there's everything spelled out between you and your partner. I think when we have a sole member LLC, people think, oh, I don't have to worry about this. But if you don't have your agreements in place and the LLC gets dragged into court, the judge is going to look at you and say, wait a second, is this a legitimate business or is Daniel just trying to, shirk some responsibility and have this kind of side hustle to get out of having to pay people? And then Daniel shows up and says, absolutely not, Judge. Here's my operating agreement. Here's my corporate minutes. Here's my annual meeting. Here's my corporate binder. We put together that entire package. And then the judge says, this is a legitimate LLC. It's got a TIN. It's got its bank account. So we want to craft that story that even if you're a single person business, there's all these little steps that we put into place and you're treated just like Apple would be if Apple got dragged into court. And that's the goal when we create that business is it's a separate thing from you. It's got its own tax ID number. Think of it as, you're working underneath it. So one of the things that business owners forget about is you can own a business and you can also work in a business, which means you get your ownership share, but you also can get a salary as the CEO or whatever title you want to give yourself. And I think understanding your different roles in the business is really important. And so I try to tell people we can start with these folks who don't have an operating agreement. And then all of the stuff that we just talked about gets fought out in court, and the judge has to look through all this. And in the end, the judge is saying, these are a couple of kindergartners arguing over a business. Why can't you just figure this out? Why do I have to be involved? So I think the reality is judges don't want to get involved in these ownership disputes when they can avoid it. And a lot of times it does seem like two kindergartners arguing over a box that has two tennis balls in it. And the
Mm-hmm.
judge looks at it and says, why don't you each take a tennis ball? And the
Mm-hmm.
problem is, well, yeah, we can each take a tennis ball, but then who gets the box at the end? And of course, the judge says, I don't care who gets the box. It's an empty box. It doesn't matter. But he's still got to sit there and listen to all the testimony and go through the trial. And he looks at it as a waste of time. So, what I try to do is take people kind of through those steps and say, you don't want to be these folks. Let's get you on the right path so you never have to see the inside of a courtroom if you and your partner disagree.
Got it. Now, when it comes to the future, I mean, the future of estate law, the future of business law, are there really any changes people should be aware of or should be paying attention to?
On the estate planning side, some states are starting to move towards electronic wills. From being a lawyer side of it, I don't think they've got it right yet. I think you can do it, but it's still kind of clunky, and that's the reality of law. If you've never really been involved in the legal industry, a lot of times, whenever we try to catch up to innovation with the rest of society, it's a very clunky implementation that will take some time, and then eventually it'll get there. So I don't know that electronic wills are there all the way yet, but I think they're coming for people as a new way to make sure your estate plan is signed. In the business side, in the real estate world, what we now have as of March 1st is we have a new requirement that when you move property into an LLC, you have to disclose with FinCEN who owns that LLC. We didn't have that before, and it's been a little bit of a headache, but we're working with some companies to get that filing taken care of for our clients. So those are probably the two things I see kind of on those two different areas right now.
Okay. And when it comes to your practice, what is your vision for your practice?
I think my vision is to kind of keep growing and keep going the way I am. I mean, it's really me, and I work with a variety of folks around the globe. I have VAs who are overseas. I have an intake center. I have folks who help me with other things around the country, and I like kind of being the person at the center of it. I was just telling somebody this morning I had a estate plan signing, and a lot of the business coaching for lawyers will tell you you don't need to be involved in any of that. Go be the CEO, let somebody else do the signings. I like the signings. It was a very nice way to start the day. It was 9 a.m. They came in, we signed some documents, we were all having a cup of coffee. I like that. So for me, that's still fun, and it's part of the practice that I wouldn't want to drop. So I think going forward, there will be new ways to probably add in AI and some other automations. But frankly, I kind of like where I am and where the process is, where the firm is going. I've got three kids, and I think in some strange world, maybe one of them becomes a lawyer and down the road says, I'm going to take it over. I think that would be fun. If you asked me which of my three kids it would be, I couldn't tell you. If I had to tell you which was going to be a litigator, I definitely know my middle son would be an excellent trial attorney. But yeah, we'll wait and see. And if that was kind of the end of all this, I'd be pretty happy to turn the firm over to one of my kids.
The great vision you have.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, Andrew, I have one last question for you, but before I ask it, I do want to point people to your website at andrewmayers.com.
Mhm.
Now, last question for you, Andrew. What does peace of mind mean to you?
Hey, well, peace of mind is just knowing that you're being present and you understand what the lay of the land looks like. So if we have peace of mind for the future, that's usually having a plan in place. If it's peace of mind for the present, I mean, so in the morning I wake up and I look at my schedule for the day, but that's not the first time I've done it. I do it the night before. I lay it out on a piece of paper. So I wake up and I kind of know what the flow of the day is going to look like. Get to spend time with my kids, spend time with my wife, spend time with my family. We get to go to events. So, I find peace of mind is what makes you calm and what makes you just feel like you in your skin. I think a challenge in the legal industry is we are given an idea of what lawyers should look like and what they should be. And we think it all has to be high pressure and high powered and they have to write nasty letters. And what I found over the last few years is there's a growing community of lawyers who are not that way. And we'd rather go home, spend time with our families, and be happy. And I think the peace of mind comes from knowing where you are and being yourself and being true to yourself, as opposed to trying to wear somebody else's suit and try to be, out there fighting some massive battle that you really don't have the heart to do, but you're doing it because you think that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Well said. Well, there you have it. Andrew sharing his expertise. So, Andrew, where can people contact you and your practice?
You can find me pretty easily online. So andrewmayers.com on most social medias. It's just at Ayers Law. So LinkedIn, YouTube. I think there's even some TikTok videos of me out there. So generally look at Ayers Law or andrewmayers.com and, feel free to send a DM or send an email and reach out. I always love to meet new people and connect. And if I'm not the right fit for you, or if I'm not in a state where you are, I'm always happy to reach out to my network and hopefully find you somebody who could help you locally.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, this was great. Thank you for coming on and thanks for sharing your knowledge.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Thanks for listening to the Verdict Signal podcast. Any questions? Please contact the practice directly with the contact information provided during the show. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.